Hello and welcome back to SuperCoach Edge, and of course another edition of Damo's Team Talk, this time coming out of round 21, and we're getting ever so close to the end of the season. And for me, my I guess priorities have kind of shifted when it comes to SuperCoach, especially I guess overall. We now have, I guess, reassigned our priorities to, I guess, from overall to head-to-head leagues. So of course, we will jump into that and assess where we're at. But of course, if you are tuning in for the first time, do consider giving us a like, giving us a sub, all that sort of stuff. We do always appreciate it. So let us have a look at how we performed, of course, coming out of round 21. And of course, as you can see here, I ended up scoring a 2,395. Obviously not the best score. I think par was around about anywhere between 2,450 and 2,500. But like the title of the video says, I ain't even mad because... as I said, my priorities and I guess aspirations, SuperCoach-wise, have shifted. So season rank ended up sliding down 914 spots. I'm surprised it actually wasn't more, 3,995. Now, as we have a look at our team, it is pretty obvious as to why I scored below 2,400, and it is all to do with that man, Labonte. So I ended up bypassing him as the VC option, obviously a very popular option first up. I know he scored quite well in his previous two games against the Ds, but I wanted to be a little bit more adventurous. I think at this time of year, I'm like, what of it? Playing head-to-head leagues, all that sort of stuff, which is a little bit of a risk, but ended up winning my main cash league, which was good to see. Through to the prelim as well, which is a bonus as well. But as you can see, I ended up rolling the dice on Flanders as the VC, facing West Coast as well, who were giving away the, I think it was second most points to opposition midfielders. So I figured, why not? He does have a nice little flaw as well, not having scored below 100. And of course, the very week that I put the VC on him, he scores below 100. Such is, of course, the curse and love-hate relationship with SuperCoach. So I scored the 91, and Sheasel was always my backup C option. So even though I knew he was going to get tagged by Graham, I just figured with his leg speed that he will be able to get off the chain. I think he was tagged for around about maybe a quarter and a bit. I know he didn't touch the ball in the first 10 minutes, but to his credit, he actually bounced back and was everywhere in the game for North and among their best. So he ended up scoring a 105, which wasn't the worst. Looked as though it was going to be a sub at 100 score, as I said early on, but happy enough with that. But of course, as you can see there, Bont should have probably gone with him. I went with the crowd. If I did, I would have gained another, 77 points off the back of the difference between Bont and Sheasel. But is what it is. And the main thing is, as I said, through to the prelim in my cash league. So I was awfully lucky with that. Sheasel 105, just rounding through line by line, of course. Dacos 101. I did think he was going to be tagged by Chincotta. I was obviously at that game. Very, very disappointing as a baggers man, of course. Full credit to the Pies. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if he really had a massive tag. But 101, probably on par with what I was expecting from him. So I was never going to put the VC or the C on him. Now, Nick Martin 104 did well enough. So we'll leave it at that. Wangani Miller was, I think, projected for about a 125 or thereabouts, which I thought was pretty lofty, especially against the Lions, who are absolutely rampaging at the moment. Had a very nice win, of course. He scored a 93, round about sort of his floor score, so could be worse. Luke Ryan finally bounced back 126. Now, as you can see here, I was kind of, if I had another option, I think I would have potentially thought about benching Ryan, but of course with no one on the bench, apart from Will Dawson that is, of course, and Zach Reed not playing, you have to back him in. I've only got one trade left, but I did think about potentially trading him. I had a look at what options we had at a disposal, but there was no one. So he had a stay of execution here, Lukey Ryan, and luckily so, because that 126, I would have been awfully frustrated had I missed out on that. But such is the way of SuperCoach. I imagine some people would have traded him out and missed out on this score. So 126 was kind of came from nowhere up against the Dons, playing at the MCG. And would you believe it? His ownership actually went down for the first time pretty much all season. He's been going up every single week in ownership, surprisingly, despite not having scored a ton in 5 weeks. So, his ownership went down only 0.1%, but for those people who were in the 1.1%, would have been so frustrated to see him scoring a 126. So, It seemed like it was one of those games. 30 disposals, 9 marks, 3 tackles, 1 free kick. So, a well overdue bounce back from Lukey the Seagull Ryan. Dan Houston 105. The ball just wasn't down in, of course, Port Adelaide's defence because they were absolutely walloping the Swans. So I was a little bit disappointed early on, but understandably the ball wasn't being down in defence. But he actually got a run on late in the game, Houston, and scored a 105. So could have been worse. So tip of the cap to him, considering circumstances. Moving on to the midfield, and of course I spoke about Bont, 182. Absolute gun. And probably just goes to show, don't be cute. But this time of year I figured it's a little bit boring, Supercoach. So let's keep it interesting. And I thought, if he was able to score around about, like looking at his scores previously, I think that was one thing that kind of, I guess, gave me a little bit of confidence to roll the dice with Flanders and Sheasel, because he hadn't really scored a captain score. Well, he scored a 122 in 1 week of his previous 4 weeks. Prior to that, 109, 108, and 106. So I was like, you know what? He could easily have a similar game, 110, 115, which isn't a captaincy score at all, or a VC lock-in score. And we'll roll the dice and hopefully make some points with Flanders and Sheasel. I could have done very, very similar last week instead of going for Sheasel when he scored the 160, and I would have been kicking myself. So, again, it's one of those things where you've just got to try and read the tea leaves, and if it falls your way, then all power to you. But if not, is what it is. So Butters 132 as well, which was pretty good considering the Swans. I thought he would have been absolutely locked down and shut down James Jordan, but got off the chain, 132. Very, very impressive. Sarong 102. Looked like his disposal potentially was letting him down. Should have been a high-scoring game from him, but wasn't to be. Zach Merritt, he came home like a house on fire in the last quarter especially. He was one of the key pillars for the Dons to really snag the win for them over Freo. So thankfully, he was a joy to watch in the last quarter, 116. Tom Green, 119 as well. He just burst home, and I think that close win over the Hawks, he just went about his thing, really. Got some nice bonus points as well with late goals and whatnot. Rosie, 108. Could have been better, but we'll take it. Sammy Walsh, 108 as well, alongside him. McKercher, 103. Thankfully, he was back after being rested. Considering I would have had to have played Dowling, who was on my bench, scored only the 44. Revel was a late in by all reports as a sub 27, but don't need to use him. But he's down now below 200k. I think he was up to around about 300 at one stage. So if anyone that needed to cash him in, hopefully he did so, but he's just there as a bit of insurance. But you're disappointed to see he is the starting sub in recent weeks. Rawlinson, West Coast on my bench if I needed to use loophole, but don't really have the luxury to do it as yet. But there is another guy returning to my team this coming week who I'll go through in a moment that I'm awfully excited about. For the Rucks, Gorn, 130, back to form for him. Really good to see. English, again, another downturn in form. Every second week he goes to shit. And really not surprising because, I think he was actually due for a bit of an uptick in score this week, I should say. He was actually, because every second week it's gone 88, 136, 70, 137, 85, 139, 83, and then a 102 on the weekend. So should have been scoring in the 130s going by that trend. So disappointed in you, good old English breakfast, but we have to persevere. Wish that we had Cherry in our team. That's definitely for sure. Kruger, obviously out of the Pies side in R3, but didn't really need to use him, thankfully, this time, given Gorney is back. Miso Gorney. Moving on to the forward line, Flanders, as I said, 91. First time below a ton, of course, as I put the VC on him. Dane Zorko, 96. Was expecting a better game from him. He was my backup captaincy option. And when Sheasel scored the 105, I'm like, here we go. You watch Zorko come out and absolutely smash it against the Saints, who have been conceding, they've kind of tightened things up in recent weeks, but still conceding points here and there. So I thought, here we go, he's going to absolutely smash it, but didn't end up doing that in the end. So I ended up gaining, as it turned out, 9 points by going Sheasel as my captain over Zorko. Caldwell, 111, looked really, really good as per usual. Heaney, another down game, 75, another sub 100, which I think now is 3 games running where he's been doing this. A bit of a worrying trend, as it is with Sydney as well. He's passed 3 games, 72, 82, and a 75. So could be a nice little luxury trade if you had more than one trade at least anyway. Luke Jackson, speaking of luxury trades, only scored a 48, and he's back to obviously playing a key forward role, and just, I think he ended up scoring a -2 in the last quarter or something. Just terrible, terrible stuff. 96, 73, and a 48. It might have been -2 in the second half, I read. But 96, 73, and 48 is past three. Just not good enough, and really is a worry, because unless you've got someone on the bench in F7, you're really stuck with his score. And speaking of which, I mean, Charlie Curnow as well, 33. Carlton, an absolute shit show by them. Awfully tough watch as a Baggers man, obviously, and as well being a Curnow owner. But like I said, F7, I do have Rankin warming my bench. He's been there for the past 4 weeks now, and gee whiz, I am super keen to get him back, because obviously, as I said, he was the main reason why I brought him in, really, is to try and, I guess, loophole and bench one of Luke Jackson or Curnow, depending on who plays first, and then, work out and loop on their scores. So I won't be able to actually do it this week, unfortunately, because round 22, I mean, Richards was my loophole going forward, Joe Richards from the Pies, and of course, Collingwood playing first up against the Swans. So that's not going to work. So I just think I'm going to have to bench one of Jackson and Curnow and just flip the coin, and we'll go through in a moment. In terms of in terms of team structure heading into round 22 as to who I bench, but thankful that I have Rankin back, and hopefully that gives me a little bit of a leg up over the rest of the competition. Be interested to see here actually as to the number of owners that have kept him across the journey, because imagine if you would have traded him out. So he was in 14.8% of teams in round 17 when he obviously copped the ban, and now he's in 4% of teams, so he is a definite pod. So yeah, geez, 10% of owners traded him out, and I probably could have done likewise as well, in all honesty, but there's no one up forward that I really wanted to jump on, apart from maybe Moore, but I think now with Rankin back, it might give me a little bit of an edge, a bit of a super coach edge, you could say. So we'll see how we go there, and hopefully it can help me out in the last 3 games of the season, especially head-to-head in my cash league, of course, which is the most important. So that is my team. That is how I sit. And as I said, Rankin. So he comes on field, and just looking quickly, we'll go through, of course, the VC and the Cs in a moment. But Rankin, I will bring on field, I think, Jackson plays Geelong at Optus Stadium. And how has he scored over the past 3 games against them? Let's have a quick squeeze. So 87, 81, and 65. So not too crash hot. And his previous games at Optus Stadium have been 73, 96, 121, 66, 67, 89, 76, 90, 98, and a 113, dating all the way back to round 1. So not too good. There's only one game there I think I went through there with the scores that were above 100. So pretty piss poor. Actually 2, sorry, apologies. 121 and a 113. Aside from that, pretty piss poor for his scoring up forward. So looks though, first glance, he may be given the bench spot. There is, of course, Charlie Curnow facing the Hawks. Going back about a month ago, maybe 6-7 weeks ago, you might have said, oh, yep, against the Hawks, he probably will score well. Carlton in okay form. But now things have turned on its head, as we can see just how close the ladder is and how many upsets and downturn in form that we've seen by Carlton, the Swans, and the like. So his previous games against the Hawks have been none better than really Jackson against the Cats. 97, 64, and 36 against the Hawks in his previous 3. Plays at the MCG, which obviously he scored the 33 on the weekend against the Pies. Prior to that, 54, 118, 80, 108, 59, 103, and a 90. So probably a little bit more consistency, at least in terms of the higher scores. There's a couple of ordinary ones mixed in there. But funnily enough, his other putrid score at the MCG was previously against the Pies, again, who he played him back in round 8. So 59 and 33 obviously was the one on the weekend. Every other score has actually been okay. 54 against Richmond. But subtracting that and the Pies game previously, not too bad. But I think, Carlton have to bounce back. I'm not convinced in the slightest that Carlton's going to win, really, with the way that we've been playing and structured up and everything else game plan related. It's been an absolute shit show. No confidence at all. The Hawks are up and about to their credit. So I still think that Kernow's going to have an okay game, put in a nice performance. Carlton backs against the wall they need to, really. And if they lose this game, they're out of the 8, well and truly, and probably won't get back in for the remainder of the year, which is ultra disappointing considering where the team was at a few weeks ago, but that's by the by. So I reckon I will bench Jackson here, and it probably comes down to my head-to-head matchup in my leagues as to who I bench. Because if my opponent, Carlton plays the third last game, the first Sunday game, so I'll need to work out if my opponent has Jackson and or Curnow and kind of work it out from there. But I think I have a little bit more confidence in Curnow compared to Jackson. Let's have a quick look at 3-round average as well. Didn't compare that. Compare the pair. So 3-round average, Curnow is 86 and 5-round is 76. So 86 and 76 compared to Jackson. 72.3 past 3 and a 90.8 is 5-round average. So yeah, I reckon we'll back in Curnow here. And yeah, hopefully we can get a nice score, of course, put the emergency on Jackson instead. Outside of that, Dowling will remain as my emergency off the bench in the midfield. And then, yeah, obviously no cover off the bench in defence. But we'll see how things go, especially with Curnow as well, because I know he came off the ground relatively late, but came back on the ground by all reports. He went off kind of limping with assistance from trainers, which isn't good, obviously. But if he's out and I have to trade him, I wonder if I bring in Philippou, who, yeah, he's 100k cheaper than Curnow. There is an option. Actually, no, there's not. I was going to say I could trade Dowling down to Philippou, and he could be, I guess, more of a floating F7 and then play Rankin every single week, obviously, for the remaining 3 weeks. But it means I've obviously got Curnow anyway. Yeah, it wouldn't work because I don't have a swing from Dowling into the forward line unless I'm putting a Heaney or someone in the midfield, which then I'll be kind of alternating between Curnow, Jackson and Philippou anyway if I was to do that. So I don't know if I will. Again, probably comes down to head-to-head league matchups. If we were going to trade it on out, yeah, as I said, Lukey Ryan, but he's kind of had the one good game, albeit it is one game. Houston's been disappointing, but as I said, he did relatively well considering the absolute shit show with Sydney's performance. Didn't see much of the ball until late, but I think we'll just have to back it in. Keep the one trade again, and yeah, three weeks to go, hopefully. I mean, you don't want to hope for injuries, but at this stage, it's probably the only thing that's separating us from the rest of the competition. If everyone else or majority of people around me have used their trades and then they have to gobble a donut or play a rookie off the bench who, scores subpar, then that would give me a leg up because I can trade that injured Primo to another Primo, hopefully, if I have the dosh. If Cherry, I will say, if Cherry was a more attainable price, he's now at 632.8, which I think would make him the highest priced ruckman in the game, which is incredible. 632.8. Yeah, English is 555, so no chance considering I've only got 10.2k in the bank. But yeah, that's my only option, I guess, really is if I trade Dowling down to Philippou, who's got the role, scoring quite well to his credit. And yeah, switching a Heaney into the midfield and then maybe benching a Walsh or a McKercher or one of those players. And then, alternating between Curnow and Jackson off the bench. But I can probably wait another week with that. Like with Philippou's price, like he went up 64.7k. Actually, I probably need to do it this week, because yeah, he's actually 5k cheaper than Dowling. So if I want to do that, I'd need to do it this week. Otherwise, if I was to trade Curnow to him, I could probably wait another week, I think. Philippu's break-even is 8, projected to go up 28.7k with a projected score of 71. So that is definitely an option if I wanted to go down that path, and back in Curnow and then flip him. But I think, yes, they play West Coast after the Hawks, Carlton, and then St Kilda. So could be an okay matchup for Curnow. So maybe I'd trade Jackson and just roll the dice with not having cover in the ruck bit, which is awfully dicey. Considering I've held Jackson this long purely because of the fact that he provides cover. So probably should have traded him weeks ago if that was the case. But I mean, every week that we get closer to the end of the season, I guess allows you to take a bit more of a risk. There's 3 games to go. The chances of a ruckman getting injured, it's probably just as much as what it is if it was mid-season. But, I guess with the window of risk, it's much smaller compared to obviously if you're trading on a ruckman with, 8 rounds to go or with your last trade type thing. There's more chance of injuries occurring. So smaller window for injury and suspension, all that sort of stuff, but obviously still can happen. So don't know if I'd go down that route. But yeah, Dowling potentially is a great one. Let's just, for argument's sake, just have a quick squeeze at this. If I was to do it, 346k. The other option would be, I don't know if he's probably too expensive now, but Matt Roberts, who's had a little bit of a resurgence. Yeah, he's at 442.7k, scored an 85. He's got the rollback by all reports. His past 4 games, 95, 114, 161, and an 85. Back to playing full games and playing actually most minutes that he's played all season, dating back to early part of the season when he had the same role. So big fan of Matt Roberts if you can afford him. But I think in terms of price point and output, it would be Philippu. So we'd need to obviously switch a forward mid into the midfield in order to get Philippu as a forward only. So for argument's sake, if we were to switch a Heaney into the midfield and then bring in Philippu, that would leave us with 15.4k with no trades left. Let's just for argument's sake go complete trade just to see how things look. So what it'd do is it would allow me an F7 and an M8. M9, I should say. So it would put me in a nice position for looping purposes. But do I take the risk? Again, of course I do have cover in the forward rucks, of course, if I wanted to do that. And it's not going to throw me out in the forward line, considering that I'll have Philippu. The midfield means that Heaney's there, or I could put Flanders in the midfield, or Caldwell, or Zorko. It doesn't really matter who, whether they're playing in the midfield or the forward line. But, depending on who's playing first, who's playing whatever, considering Heaney hasn't been scoring too well, for example, one way to get a leg up over the competition is to have Heaney, for argument's sake, on the bench, which sounds silly, but considering he scored sub-tons over the previous 3 games, it might actually give you a little bit of a leg up. Like 72, 82, 95, 75, owned by 62.9% of the competition. It does allow you to have a leg up. I mean, depending on the score of the replacement player that you're playing in place of Heaney, who's on the bench, like if it was McKercher, for example, and we're using the scores from the weekend as an example, if Heaney was to score 75 against the Pies and McKercher scores a 103 up against West Coast as well, mind you, that's a swing of, 28 points? Quick maths. So, yeah, it's one of those things where maybe it's not much of a difference. But even, for example, if a player like Heaney playing first up gets injured, knock on wood, it doesn't happen, but you obviously don't have to gobble that score that he punches out injury affected, so on and so forth. So I guess I don't mind this, because it allows flexibility and looping purposes across 2 different lines. But I'm awfully worried still about the defense, because there's no coverage whatsoever. I don't think Will Dawson from the Roos is going to play for the remainder of the year. Zach Reed's out for the year. He's done with his pectoral muscle injury. So I need to back in these 6 defenders to play every single one of the remaining 3 games of the home and away season. Again, a risk with especially head-to-head league finals matchups. But do we go for broke? Do we do it? Because virtually, we've got coverage provided, I know the risk that you run because going like this and you're like, yeah, for sure, like you're going to get an injury in defense and it's going to cook you. But going down this route, it allows coverage across all lines, like in terms of the main lines, like the midfielders, we've got Heaney as, M8. In the ruck, as I said, we can swing Jackson into the ruck and not be thrown out. Kruger goes into, the forward bench, and then that doesn't throw out our forward line either. And then with Jackson in the forward line as well, it does allow us to, as the F7, or could alternate with Kerno, depending on who plays first, loop on or loop off a specific player. It's not going to work this week specifically because, as I said, Joe Richards from the Pies, who is my loophole player, plays first up. So we'd need to back in a specific player. So take a risk on benching one of the players in the forward line, which probably would be a Jackson or a Kerno. Just want to have a quick look at Philippou as well whilst we're here, and then we'll obviously round out this chat with the VC and the C. Let us know as well if you're watching us or listening to us via podcast as to what your thoughts are. Hit us up on Twitter, or if you're watching us on YouTube, let us know in the comment section down below as to whether or not you think we should go for Philippou via Dowling. Like, Dowling was a pretty good play, but I think with Matt Crouch back, it does muddy the waters there, and he's not as reliable for scoring on a weekly basis. I do think he's got the job security still, but not the scoring as such. Philippou, mind you, in his past 3 games, I know he's just made a return from injury, but past 3 games, 112, 101, and 85. Didn't hit the heights of the previous 2 games, but still, on return, he had 24 disposals, 5 marks, and 3 tackles. Again, the big thing with him is he has the role. So let's go to DFS Australia and just reconfirm this, check out how many CBAs he had in the Saints engine room. And that's the thing about this is, like, you love jumping on players that have a uptick in form and score off the back of a change in role. So Keys, for example, from the Crows, didn't have a change in role, has had some okay or pretty good scores in recent games, but hasn't had a change in role. Small forward, dependent upon the form of the Crows. If the Crows go shit, and we've seen that, as we did on the weekend, his scoring goes down. So don't want to be backing in players like Keys, but Philippou, I'm a big fan of. So he ended up having 57% CBA, so slightly less than his previous 2 games of 63 and 68%, but still getting that mid-roll, which is really good to see. Even more so, Paddy Dow played the first game that he's played in, 5 weeks, and he has been gifted CBA. So if Dow goes out, and I'm just looking at the players that aren't playing. So Clark went out of the team. Winhager's yet to come back. I don't know what the outlook is there for him, but he'll get CBAs obviously when he returns. Seb Ross only had 18%. So he's gone from 70%, 72%. Interesting. So he's kind of like Zach Jones. Zach Jones's CBAs have a massive correlation with Philippou. So Philippou in the round 17, round 18 game, obviously round 17, Zach Jones didn't play, so Philippou had 63% CBAs. Round 18, Zach Jones played, had 32% CBAs, and then Philippou had 68%. And then for the previous 2 games when Philippou wasn't playing, CBAs for Zach Jones rose, more than doubled, 70% CBAs in round 19, and then 72% in round 20. And then on the weekend, when of course Philippou returned, Zach Jones' CBAs dropped all the way down to 18%. Philippou, 57%. So looks as though he's taken that spot from Zach Jones. And they prefer to play, obviously, Philippou instead of Jones, who's more of a depth player. Stocker as well had 21% CBAs. Has kind of had a bit of a run with role in the recent games, but outside of that, they're all expendable, really, apart from, as I said, when Winhager returns. And Paddy Dow obviously could lose his spot and CBAs. So I really, really love the look of Mateus Philippou. So let us know, as I said, what your thoughts are. But I'm a big fan of this because I'm just trying to extrapolate ahead and think, if I'm not using a trade this week, I'd obviously be able to use a trade either next week or, which is round 23, the second last round, or round 24, the last round, which I think is kind of a bit of a waste. Considering the guys that I'd be trading out, I'd have to trade out one of the bigger guns in order to afford someone of equivalent value that could punch out a better score, which I think at this stage there's kind of slim pickings around, players around the 650, 660 odd price point, even 580, 560, that sort of price point where there aren't really other options. In the rucks, I can't reach to get someone like a Cherry. In the forward line, it's slim pickings. I mean, there is, as I said, more. Dylan Moore from the Hawks is still 504.3k, but that would only come via me trading potentially an Isaac Heaney directly to Dylan Moore, which I think is a little bit of a waste. I'd much prefer to have, cover off F7 to loop players that are highly owned, especially like a Luke Jackson or an Isaac Heaney, to really get, double the chance of legs up over the rest of the competition. And like I said, if I was to use the trade in defense, there's no one around that 500k price point that I could have confidence in at all. I'll just have a quick squeeze as well in terms of any price changes. No, I wouldn't trust Blakey. Max Holmes dropped down massively, 34.7k. I actually liked him, but no. Nick Newman's in good form as well. Thereabouts. He's actually only had one really good game, which is on the week at 144. Prior to that, 84, 90, 64, 84. Bailey Dale's probably out of reach. Tom Stewart, if I had the cash, 100%, but I don't. That's about it. Like, there's no one else I have confidence in. Trent Rivers, 503.6 with a 90, but lacks that ceiling, which you want. And the D's, I think they're throwing in the towel now. His previous 5 games have been 143, 99, 97, 90, and 90. So apart from that round 17 game, which was against West Coast as well, he's had just sub-ton scores, but you want someone that's going to be, yes, he's consistent, but you want someone with a little bit of range to them, which Philippou, I think, does have. At least the floor, I reckon, is similar to Rivers, and he comes so cheap, 331.1k. As I said, 112, 101, and 85 in his previous 3. Actually, who does Philippou play? I know he plays my mob in the last game of the round. But he plays Richmond this weekend coming up. So, very nice opportunity, of course. Richmond, they do give up quite a few points in the midfield and across the ground. So, he is definitely one. Then he plays Geelong, and as I said, Carlton. To round out the home and away season, of course, the SuperCoach season, we'll just have a look at defence v position, and then we might roll into VC and Cs to round things out. So Richmond, in their past 5, they've got a positive correlation to points conceded to opposition mids, but nothing to write home about. Probably, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Probably like the 7th best rated team to play against if you're an opposition mid. But still, I mean, the Tigs, they're up against it, and I think if they're going to tag anyone with Jack Graham, they'll tag Jack Steele. So I don't mind this setup personally. Just the only thing it does mean is that, we do have DPP swings with defence and midfield, but only through Dacos and Martin. So unless either of those guys get injured, I wouldn't have cover for the likes of Sheasel, Wayne and Miller, Luke Ryan, or Houston. So, yeah. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And I wouldn't have DPP swings between... Heaney would be for, obviously, Flanders, Zorko, and Caldwell in the forward line, but wouldn't be able to swing him into the bench to cover a Curnow, Philippou, Jackson, who are all, they've got no forward mid swings. So something to consider, but we might leave things like this, and then I'll make my decision based upon my head-to-head matchups when I look at things a little bit closer. But if I don't use the last trade this week, I probably will use it next week, I think, just to run the risk. But this makes it a little bit fun, I think, to round out the year. At least we have a bit of destiny in our hands to swing some loopholes and so on and so forth. Of course, you got to look forward as well, because Rawlinson would be my loophole with Heaney, and I'd have to work out as to who I bring off field. That's the only thing. And then, yeah, as I said, with Jackson and Richards, I can't loop with Joe Richards in the forward line because he's playing first up. But let's have a quick look forward, actually. Round 23, Sydney played the first game again against Essendon, so that's another option as well. Like I said, I can always swing Heaney with Flanders, Zorko, or Caldwell if I wanted to try and loop any of those players, which I probably don't, considering they're all in really good form and scoring quite well. But Heaney's downturn in form, which has coincided with Sydney's bad form line in recent weeks, doesn't fill me with confidence. But Sydney play first up in round 23. My loophole player would be Rawlinson, obviously with West Coast. They play last game of the round against my mob. Then round 24. And I don't necessarily need to do it with Heaney. I could do it with another player as well if I wanted to. Considering West Coast play the last game of round 23, I could do it with a... who could I do it with? Early games. Could do it with the Rosie. Could do it with a Tom Green. Could do it with Zach Merritt if I wanted to, and try and loop one of the high-owned players to get a little bit of an edge, but obviously a risk. But yeah, that's virtually what we've got there. And then round 24, let's have a quick squiz. Essendon play first up. So, yeah, and what we could even do is put McKercher back in defence and then Martin in the midfield and have him as a bit of a loophole player if you really wanted to try, as I said, get a leg up over the rest of the competition. Wholly owned player, so on and so forth. Sorry, I should look back at round 23 because in terms of Jackson and Curnow, Collingwood play middle of the round. They play before Carlton, who plays the last game of the round, and after Jackson. So, yeah, we could put Jackson on the bench with the emergency, and then, of course, provided that Joe Richards doesn't play, loop him on field for a Curnow, I would say. So that's the loop option in the forward line for the midfield, which is it's showing that it could work well, provided the loops are there. As I said, with Heaney playing first up against the Dons around 23, and then switch out someone like a McKercher, could be a Walsh, could be a Rosie, Tom Green, any of these guys. So that's an option. And then round 24, Joe Richards. So Collingwood play. Actually, we don't know it's a floating fixture at the moment, which is bloody annoying. But hopefully the AFL come out with surely they do. Like, it's 2 weeks out. Like, pull your heads in AFL. Absolutely ridiculous they waited this long. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see as to who plays first out of Jackson and Curnow. And hopefully Collingwood play late in the round so I can use him as a bit of a loophole option. That is Joe Richards. So we'll leave things with that, but we'll have a quick look at VC and C options now. Let's go back to round 22. So, as I said, Swans up against the Pies first up. Don't know. I mean, Heaney, how's he gone in his previous few games against the Pies? He's probably smashed it. Yeah, 136, which is back in round 1. A 61 and a 109 prior to that. Don't have any other Swans. Collingwood, nope. I mean, Dacos, don't know if... I reckon the Swans are going to come out far. Off the back of this poor showing against Port, surely they come out and absolutely try to belt the pants off Collingwood. Helps as well that it's at the FCG. Dacos, back in round 1, he actually scored a 135. Surely James Jordan goes to Dacos. Prior to that, 81 and 62. So he's really only had the one captaincy score against Richmond round 21, 47. Prior to that, 101, 106, 89, 92. Then a 116 back in round 16. So hasn't been in the best form, Dacos. So I probably wouldn't trust him, but you could put the VC on him if you wanted to do that. Brisbane up against the Giants. I don't have anyone to really have any confidence in. Tom Green, how's he gone against the Lions? Yeah, back in round 7, 159, which is a really, really good score. Scored okay, not probably captaincy or VC scores in recent weeks. 117, 102, 119 his previous three most recent games. North up against West Coast, as I said, Sheasel. He's probably, even though I had him as my captain, and he's been my VC the previous week when he scored the 160, I reckon I might go for She's Nuts. Scored the 129 back in round 13 against the Eagles. Prior to that, 114 and 114 in round 20 last year and round 1 last year. So really good form. 138, 160, 105. As I said, really nice score previous game. And West Coast, they give up in their previous 5 games. They've actually got a negative correlation to opposition defenders. However, he's playing more in the midfield now, Sheasel. So they're actually giving up the second most points to opposition inside mids are the Eagles. So he would probably be my top VC option. So we'll whack the VC on him. Next up we have Freo up against Geelong. Sarong potentially. Has he scored 110, 135 and a 79? So probably not. And hasn't had the highest ceiling in recent games either. That's probably it for me for that game. Essendon up against Gold Coast. Could you go for Merritt? Off the back of a nice win against Freo, the Dons. Merritt, previous 3 games against the Gold Coast. 97, 114, 136. So a little bit of a mixed bag, but hasn't had the high scores either. Like he's, I guess, VC or captaincy where the scores have been 145 back in round 17 against the Pies. Previous 4 games have been 116, 106, 108 and an 82. So struggling for a bit of ceiling game there. There is Flanders, of course, who was my VC. Don't know if I'll have the I guess the to be brave enough to put the captaincy on him, especially. It would be a flipping fortunes actually going for the VC on Sheasel and the captaincy on Flanders, whereas I put the VC on Flanders and the captaincy on Sheasel on the weekend. So his previous 3 against the Dons for Flanders have been 119 back in round 12 and then a 46 and a 65. So Essendon actually give up a little bit of a positive plus 3.15 to opposition wing defenders. And he's probably more of a, he's probably wing defender or defender. So, yeah, don't know if I'll have confidence in him. Melbourne up against Port now. Gawn, I reckon, against Sweet. Might be a nice matchup. So, Port, they've actually been pretty restrictive in recent games, but he scored a 177 back in round 3, believe it or not. Did Miso Gorney. 177. It's crazy. So, Gawn's definitely an option as well. Scored a 130 against English on the weekend. He's back, baby. Port Adelaide is Butters. There's Rosie. Does Neil Bullen go to Butters? I think he probably would. So I wouldn't have confidence in putting the VC, or especially C, if I'm putting the VC on Cheese. I wouldn't have the confidence in Butters. Scored a 98 back in round 3. Scored a 132 on the weekend, as I said, against the Swans. But, yeah, no. Not for me. Carlton up against the Hawks. Wouldn't have any confidence in Walsh whatsoever. Out of form, and yeah, he's playing injured. Really, he's got a sore back. Rest of the man. 99. Previous 3 scores, of course. 99, 124, and 116. Richmond up against St Kilda. So no, not Philippou. I wouldn't. Wangan and Miller. Richmond, have they been giving up points to opposition defenders? General defenders they have. Probably 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th most, I think. Wing defenders, if you want to classify Nasir as that, they're giving up the 3rd most points to opposition. Where am I looking? Richmond. They are giving up, their most points, I should say, to opposition wing defenders. So not too bad there, but I wouldn't be game enough to do that. And then Adelaide up against the Dogs. Probably English if you wanted to go down that route, but no. He scored a 118 against the Dogs previously, then 111 and 90. So I would say no, honestly. Don't think they've got a negative correlation to opposition points conceded to rucks to Adelaide. So that's virtually it, I think, ladies and gents. Did I go through Zorko? Zorko against the Giants? I don't think I did. Oh, no. Scored 56 back in round 7, then a 71 and a 37. So, yep. I think that's that. I think I might lock in Sheasel with the VC. And we might go for the C at a pinch. Potentially Miso Gorney. Could I go for Rankin, actually? Rankin against the Dogs. Imagine if he comes out and smashes it. First game back, he'd be champing at the bit, really. 46, 89, and 62 previous games against the Dogs. But his previous scores, prior to getting suspended, Rankin, 142, 125, 96, 121, and a 97. So he's going to come out firing, and hopefully so. And we'll see how we go. But of course, as always, tune into our weekly episode, which we'll be rolling out probably on Tuesday at this rate. Hopefully by Tuesday anyway. Where, of course, we will be going through, trade prospects. We might even try and do a live with that as well. Which will be, if we go live, I think we probably will try and do lives for the remainder of the season, just something different. So you can jump on there. Feel free to do so. Probably try and do it around about 8:30ish on YouTube. So if you're listening to us on the podcast, make sure to check us out on YouTube. Give us a sub, give us a like, all that sort of stuff. And jump on, and you can be like, as we've said last time, a bit of a live studio audience. We will be taking your questions live as they come through as we record our episode live. So you can heckle us, you can throw questions at us, all that sort of stuff. Bit of fun, bit of banter. And that's it. So you can see us there. And of course, we will be releasing the audio version of that live recording on podcast as well, if you so prefer to consume it that way. Oh, and as well, just a bit of a quick plug as well. Make sure to check out my alternative, of course, YouTube channel, which is Blue Baggers Edge. Make sure to go and check that out, of course. I am posting up reviews and previews for the remainder of the year, and I just haven't recorded my review of the Carlton Collingwood game as yet, but rest assured, it is coming and it is scathing. And of course, not just surface level, I'm talking about tactics, I'm talking about structure, I'm talking about deep diving into stats. You know, I'm a stats man here on SuperCoach Shed. So if you're a fellow bagger, you want to hear analysis that goes beneath the surface, goes coach level, this is the sort of raw data that they have access to and should be responding off the back of. I go through that and more, so make sure to check that out. It is, of course, Blue Baggers Edge. Check it out. Give us a like, give us a sub. We really do appreciate the support. But that's it, ladies and gents. Hopefully you had an absolutely fantastic round. Of course, as I said, it was the first week of SuperCoach Finals. Hopefully you were able to win your first game, whether or not you've gone through from the elimination final or you've won your way through to the prelim or you've got a second chance. Hopefully that's the case. All of those, or one of those at least. And with that, ladies and gents, we will catch you in the next one. Thanks as always for tuning in. We'll see you then. All the best. Cheers.